Hello. In this video, I want to show you how to optimize the dynamics of your music for online streaming. We all know by now that online streaming services are using loudness management. They're turning louder songs down and they're turning quieter songs up to create a more consistent, satisfying listening experience for the user. This is a process called loudness normalization. The challenge and the question I keep getting asked is to know what effect that's going to have on your music when it gets played back and what you can do to get the best possible results. So I'm going to try and answer those questions, and to do that I'm going to use a new feature of my Dynameter plugin, which measures a property of the audio called PLR. And the PLR is the integrated peak to loudness ratio. So the main thing that Dynameter measures is the PSR, which is the short-term peak to loudness ratio. And there's another video where you can find out more about that. But the integrated PLR is an overall value that you can assign to a whole song or a section of audio. And it can also be very useful, especially when you combine it with PSR, as we'll see. And in a minute, I'll show you how knowing the PLR of our music can help us predict how its playback loudness will be affected online. So here's the PLR display in Dynameter. And I'll just hit play so you can see how it works. Initially, it's tracking the short-term peak to loudness ratio quite closely, as you can see. But already, it's starting to slow down and show an overall value. And if I just skip ahead to the end, you can see that once the entire song has played, the overall PLR value for this song is about 11. So what does that mean? It's tempting to think that the PLR value gives you an overall idea of how dynamic a song is, that larger values are more dynamic and lower values are less dynamic. But we need to be careful because we can see just in this song that although the integrated peak to loudness ratio, the PLR, is 11, at some points the short-term peak to loudness ratio went right down to 8. And you can see this even more clearly if I show you two other examples. All three of these measure PLR 11, but you can see that the dynamic profiles are very different. The song on the left here is generally quite dynamic for most of the song's running time. The song in the middle drops right down to PSR 6 for two quite long sections at the end, and you'd never know that by looking at the PLR value alone. So we need to be careful. What can be very useful though is to combine the information about the PLR value with the minimum PSR. So we've just seen an example where you had a decent PLR reading, but the minimum PSR was quite low, suggesting that some sections of the song could have very restricted, limited dynamics. If you have a healthy PLR reading and the minimum PSR reading isn't too low, the chances are the song is in very good shape dynamically. But if you have a low PLR and a low minimum PSR, the chances are you're looking at a loudness war casualty. And we still see far more songs than I would like looking like this, unfortunately. So now let's look at how PLR affects replay loudness online. The AES recently released guidelines with recommended loudness levels for online streaming music services. But so far, those guidelines haven't been adopted, which means that each music streaming service uses a different replay loudness level, and they all measure loudness in slightly different ways. But we can measure the optimum peak to loudness ratio for each platform in the same way that we can measure the peak to loudness ratio of a piece of music. And the way that that platform PLR affects the replay loudness of the music can be summed up with two fairly simple statements. Number one, if your music's PLR is equal to or less than the platform PLR, your music will get played back at that platform's normal reference level, i.e. a similar volume to everything else, no matter how loud they are. So it's effectively the loudest it can get played back on that platform. And two, if your music's PLR is higher than the platform PLR, it may not be turned up as much as other songs. So the simple conclusion to come to from that is that if you want your music to play back as loudly as possible on a particular streaming platform, you should make sure that the PLR of your music is equal to or lower than the platform PLR. But we only really need to worry about that for the very loudest songs. If you imagine a song that starts loud, continues loud all the way through and ends loud, and you want that to play back as loudly as anything else online, then you need to keep the PLR of your music inside the platform PLR. And we can see how that works in practice using Dynameter with the example song we have. As well as the dynamics preset that allows you to target your ideal minimum PSR value, Dynameter also has a platform preset that allows us to choose the platform PLR we're interested in and compare it to the measured PLR. So here I've selected the YouTube setting, and we can see the yellow arrow up here on the PLR display shows us that YouTube's platform PLR is 12. And because this song has a measured PLR of 11, which is less than the platform PLR of 12, this song is going to play back at a similar loudness to the loudest material on the platform. And since this is a loud song, that's exactly what we would want. If I choose the preset for Apple, this is the platform PLR for Apple's sound check method of managing loudness, we can see that the platform PLR in this case is higher, it's 15. So this song is well within those limits. And in fact, what will happen is that this song will get turned down by soundcheck, along with lots of other loud songs. And provided the measured PLR of your music is less than 15, even if your music is mastered a bit quieter, it will get turned up to match as well. And that's an important issue, because it also means that there's no point in reducing the PLR or the PSR any further in an attempt to make things any louder online. Once your music's PLR is equal to or less than the platform PLR, it won't get any louder, even if you reduce the dynamics further. And now you can start to see why the tagline of Dynameter is "Stop worrying about loudness." It doesn't actually matter how loud the levels of your music files are. The key thing as far as playback online is concerned is the dynamics, the PLR and the minimum PSR values of your music. Stay above the minimum PSR value to avoid crushing the music too much, to avoid using too much compression or limiting, and check the PLR value if you need reassurance that the loudest music will still get played back at a similar level to everything else. And I should also probably say at this point, of course, these platform PLRs are our best estimates based on the measurements that we've made. So you do need to use them with a little bit of caution and double check that you get the results that you expect when you actually upload your music. We found they give really reliable feedback in our testing though. One other thing to say just before we move on from this preset is you'll notice that it's labelled Apple/AES. That's because a platform PLR of 15 matches the high end of the AES recommendations on streaming loudness. They suggest a range of streaming loudness levels, and the value Apple has chosen already fits in well with those guidelines. And looking forward into the future, I foresee YouTube and Spotify and other streaming platforms complying with this guideline as well. So that does raise an interesting question about which platform you should be optimizing the dynamics of your music for. And that's a decision you'll have to make based on your own preferences. The good news about that, though, is that in my experience, the loudest music fits quite naturally even within YouTube's fairly aggressive platform PLR, without any extra processing being required. And if your music has more dynamic variety, let's say the first half of the song is quiet and then later on it gets loud, you'll find it has a higher measured PLR, but the loud sections will still sound good and loud. And here's a real-world example of that. This is how Dynameter measures the song Routine by Steven Wilson as played back from YouTube. You can see it's got great dynamics and it measures PLR 15, but even on YouTube, the loudest sections are actually louder than some of the loudest material that's out there. So something like Metallica's Death Magnetic, to take an extreme example, is turned down so much because of the loudness management but the louder sections of a more dynamic song like Routine actually end up playing back louder than something like Metallica, which was originally recorded at a much higher level. And that's why I say you only really need to pay careful attention to the PLR value as reassurance that the loudest music you're mastering is going to stand up well against the competition. So Dynameter also has two other presets. A broadcast preset where the platform PLR is 22, which applies mostly for TV broadcast at the moment, and Spotify, which has the most aggressive platform PLR of 10, but is a special case. Unlike all the other platforms, Spotify will apply limiting to reduce the PLR if necessary. So in this case, knowing that the song we've measured here has a PLR of 11 and Spotify's platform PLR is 10 means that there might be some very light limiting of this song when it gets played back. And since, as I say, I'm confident that Spotify and YouTube will increase their platform PLRs in future, I personally wouldn't recommend you do any special optimization for it, but we've included the preset so that you have that information available to you. So we've got into quite a lot of detail in this video, but optimizing the dynamics of your music for online playback with Dynameter is actually very straightforward. All you need to do is make sure that the minimum PSR never falls below the target for the preset that you've selected, and that the PLR never goes outside the platform PLR that you've chosen for the loudest songs that you master. When you find that sweet spot, your music can have great dynamics and play back at competitive levels anywhere online. So there you go. I hope that helps you understand how Dynameter measures the integrated peak to loudness, the PLR, what it can tell you about the music you're listening to, and how you can use it to get an idea of how your music is going to be treated when it's played back online with loudness management in place. For more information on Dynameter, please go to dynameterplugin.com. For more videos like this, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or head over to my site, productionadvice.co.uk. My name is Ian Shepherd. Thanks for listening.